Welcome to Law and Crime. No, I'm not Jesse Weber. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott with you this morning from 9 to noon. Jesse will then be hosting at 12 o'clock. We have a lot that we are covering here on Law and Crime. We've been covering all week. Let's talk about the things today that we are going to be showing and discussing. Well, it's clear now Amon Moss, the father of this 10-year-old, did nothing, stood by while his child actually died. A horrible case. I want to bring in our legal analyst, Gabriel Sepulveda Sanchez. Did I say that correctly?
Sepulveda, that's
I'm so sorry. So I want to make sure I say that correctly. Our legal analyst and trial attorney, thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime.
Thank you.
So tell me, first of all, he just testified that the defendant in this case, Tiffany Moss, told him she wanted to hide it, the fact that the child was deceased. Does that in and of itself bring a guilty conviction for murder against her?
Well, not murder. I think as far as the felony murder rule goes, they're showing the totality of the evidence is going to show that she's been intentionally deprived of food, and whatever it was that caused her to end up dying. So we don't know if her actual intent was to kill Imani or she just ended up dying because of the torture she was enduring. I wouldn't say that's enough, but it's definitely evidence towards felony murder conviction.
All right, let's talk about that intent piece. So you know and I know that she has not cross-examined any witnesses as the defendant, nor is she represented, nor did she do an opening statement. How effective do you think that might be in her ability or reasonable doubt that she didn't have the intent? Or are those two related at all?
I mean, she's not putting up a defense at all, it looks like. She hasn't cross-examined any witnesses, no opening statement. It's just, I think it's just a very bad situation for her. Assuming there's a guilty conviction against her, what's going to happen next? I mean, is she going to argue for herself at the sentencing hearing? Something has to happen, and I think by not speaking at all, she's just burying herself pretty much.
Right. And so, you know, what's hard about this in this case for me is they've already introduced evidence. And in Georgia, we had some discussion about this yesterday. In Georgia, you cannot bring in prior bad acts to talk about the character of the defendant, but you can certainly bring them in for other reasons. So for instance, to show the planning or the premeditation. And so they did bring in that this defendant has abused Imani in the past and actually has convictions for abuse of Imani. I think that is a huge, significant piece of showing that she intended this. What are your thoughts?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we have a bunch of evidence. There's evidence out there that the police have visited her. They spoke to Imani. She has the conviction already for child abuse. I mean, this shows you that there's a history of this history of abuse with Imani, and that more likely than not, she was involved in the intentional starving of her in this situation.
So play devil's advocate with me. Is there anything you can think of that could be done differently? A death penalty case, the worst sentence possible, obviously, death penalty case. Anything that could have been done differently to ensure that she actually exercised her right to have an attorney? Or is it her choice?
I mean, it's her choice. I mean, everyone has the right to defend themselves. I think the judge, they've been checking in with her to see if she was competent or not. I think there was comments by the DA put on the record that stated that they observed the defendant not taking notes. I think they check in with her and they see that she's attentive. They even asked her questions about whether she's had a chance to review the discovery turned over by the DA, and she's acknowledging, yes, I had the discovery. No, I didn't review it. So I mean, she's obviously knows what's going on. So I mean, what else can you do to give her chance to have a defense for her case?
And I can only imagine that jurors are thinking, what the heck? Here they are listening to this, and they're watching the defendant. She is there. She's kind of smiling. She's kind of, she's not indicating she's remorseful or showing any remorse for the circumstances. Now we are live back in the trial. Now we are going to discuss some of this, but let me just tell you who this is. This is Chris Ford, a computer forensic examiner. And right now the prosecution is doing what they always have to do to lay the foundation. They're asking about his work background and experience, training, qualifying him as an expert. So let's talk about this in terms of qualifying someone as an expert. I know it can sound sound a little boring to even the jury, but is this necessary before they get his opinion and what he'd done in terms of forensics and computers?
Yeah, with these types of witnesses, a DA or defense attorney is always going to lay the foundation and ask them about their education, their experience, and so they can give an opinion or as far as whatever it is they're testifying to.
And do you have any guess as to what? It's computer forensic, but I hadn't yet heard any information about what might be on a computer that they're going to introduce into evidence. What are your guesses?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what they're going to get to on this also. It could be maybe they're Google searching, maybe they had some photos or the DA is probably going to put some evidence on showing that there was some sort of search or any sort of evidence that they were trying to hide the body, or they could have been researching how to dispose of a body. Anything that can actually tie into Imani's death, the computer forensic guy is gonna talk about that and see if they found anything there.
And it's going to be really interesting to see because I haven't heard anything about what was on a computer, so we're going to learn that as we continue to show you this testimony live. I'll tell you what, this prosecutor is an excellent attorney in terms of laying the foundation, going through every single step to ensure that this witness can say exactly what he found on the father's phone, and his testimony is he had the consent of the father to search the phone. Tell us, the consent to search the father's phone and get photographs of it. Is there an opportunity for the defendant, Tiffany Moss, who's married to the one who gave this consent, to say, but I didn't consent, you can't use that against me, if she were represented by attorneys?
Is there opportunity? Can you say that?
Sure. Let me simplify that. These aren't pictures from her cell phone. They're pictures from her husband's cell phone. If she had attorneys, may they have argued, well, they're not admissible as to her?
This would come up more in the pretrial phase as far as certain motions for suppression of evidence. Find out, these are things, if you had an attorney earlier on, you can challenge before the trial would come in. And possible that you might make those arguments, but I think that's because it's his phone, then there shouldn't be an issue with that.
Would there be an advantage to her having an attorney? Now, we've talked about, yes, she should have during the trial, but in terms of pretrial motions, should she have had an attorney then, in your opinion?
Oh, yeah, sometimes that's where the most of the work is done. So in the pretrial, you're going to get an idea in the preliminary hearing, what witnesses they're going to put on, what evidence they have they're going to use against you. And you can do different motions to eliminate certain evidences, get rid of certain expert witnesses that DA is planning on putting on as the witness. So definitely, that she had none of that during the pretrial phase. She's in big disadvantage because of that.
And is this disadvantage going to be enough for a jury to convict her of murder beyond a reasonable doubt? We're going to stay tuned, continue to watch this trial. All right, the prosecution has stopped asking this witness questions. This is the first of what we expect to be 3 witnesses today. I want to bring back in my panel special guest because, Gabriel, I'm going to start with you. Some of the questions were things like, what did the text say? Oh, you need to bring home diapers and pull-ups. I feel like I'm getting sick. You brought it home. I'm on the phone with Imani's teacher, and Imani would not talk to her. What's the relevance? I don't understand these. What's the point?
I was having a hard time figuring that out also. I thought some of those text messages were not relevant to this. Maybe they're trying to show that there was a constant communication between the defendant and her husband. I know there were some text messages that demonstrated the defendant's frustration with Imani, her not speaking to her teacher at school, and SMH shaking my head. And that could be used as evidence that she was frustrated and had intent to punish her more. That's where I'm thinking this is going right now.
Gabriel, how did you feel about this computer forensics expert's testimony? I mean, it's dry material to an extent, but do you think the jury was able to focus on the content of the text, which was the whole point?
I thought it was a little dry, to be honest. They went into really a lot of detail. I thought some of those text messages were irrelevant. I thought the little things they were talking about, I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. But they had to, like, I agree with I'm sorry, what's your name again? Jana. Yeah, I agree with her. I think that it does show that there was some, there was some favoritism towards her own biological kids and not towards Imani. So I agree.
And again, I see it all the time, unfortunately, a target child. Gabriel, what do you think the jury's thinking about her sitting there? She's not remorseful. She's not crying. What do you think?
It's just, I think it's a bad look. She's not even cross-examining, putting on any witnesses, not even demonstrating her personality at all to the jury, not giving them 1% of showing any sort of sympathy or any favoritism, any sort of favored opinion of her. But I think it's killing her right now, and it's really odd too because, like Joanne said, she had the same offer on the table as her husband. She didn't take that, and the only reason you would stand trial is to defend yourself and with the possibility of getting a not guilty verdict. I mean, right now it's why even put yourself through this? What are you doing? I'm just completely baffled right now.
Well, let me throw an alternative to both of you, and here's why. Because I see defendants in court as a judge filling in, hey, we're going to leave it up to God or leave it up to fate, depending on the religion that they express. But we're going to let that decision be made in court. I'm not going to participate actively. I'm not going to say a word, but I'll accept the consequences. Could it be that she feels, she has said in the past, I'm going to leave it up to God? Could she perhaps feel like, it is what it is. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to mount a defense, but I'll accept whatever consequences, potentially even including the death penalty.
They say God helps those that help themselves. That's what I think about when I see this case. She's not really helping herself at all. So it just doesn't make sense to me. The interesting thing is that she was found competent. There's a competency hearing, I think, and I think she was found competent to stand trial. And they keep asking her questions. Did you receive the DA's discovery? Yes. Did you review any? Are you going to put on any witnesses? It sounds to me like she is competent and she does understand what's going on. So I'm just really baffled of I don't know what her approach is and what she plans on doing.
There were texts from Sexy Wifey, who's the defendant, to her husband, the father of the child. And she says, Amani dropped bath water on her legs and burned them. She said she wanted to see what it would do. Now, there was no indication that the father did anything about it or responded or reacted. We know, in fact, he said he didn't take the child to the doctor. If I were a jury hearing that, maybe I'd think it is the father's fault. He didn't do anything. She said, listen, Amani did this to herself, and he failed to take the child to the doctor, to respond, to take an active role in treating the child. So could the jury blame the father and let her off? What are your thoughts, Gabriel?
They could do that in theory, but I mean, when you sit here and she's not putting on any witnesses or cross-examining anyone, so she's not even giving herself a shot, really. I mean, I think she wants to help herself out, cross-examine, elaborate on some of those things. It's just, yeah.
Does her appearance, how much does the physical appearance of a defendant affect the jury and what they think? Gabriel?
It could. Anything can happen. And the jury may see, she looks like she's a little confused, doesn't really know what's going on, not defending herself. They could feel sorry for her. And that's the thing with criminal law, just in these cases, anything can happen. And it's a good possibility of that. I think in the end, with all the testimony they put on and the evidence I've heard so far, I don't think it's going to end up good for her.
Gabriel, I'm signing you off. Thank you so much for joining us as legal analyst today. We'll also continue to cover Tiffany Moss out of Georgia. We have to take a short break. Come right back. We'll be back here on Law and Crime, gavel to gavel.